Beautiful, isn't it? Precision, timing, style. All coming together in an almost effortless grace. As skater after skater moves into the line to form the classic skater's wheel. But there's a lesson to be learned amid all this graceful beauty. It's a basic, simple lesson. One that has to do with distance and travel. It's simply that the skaters on the outside of the line must travel a greater distance than those skating at or near the center of the line. It's the same kind of situation found in automobile racing, where outer wheels on the car travel farther than inner, just as cars at the top of the track travel farther than those running down near the infield. Perhaps that helps account for a special kind of compensation, those hard-fought battles that often go on for track position. The story continues out on the highway. Wheels on the outside of a curve must travel farther than wheels on the inside. Rockwell International presents Splitting the Difference. For skaters, the greater speed at the outside compensates for the skater's unequal distance of travel. Unequal distance, however, is a whole different thing where vehicles are concerned. Whether they're passenger cars, light or medium-duty trucks, or the largest over-the-highway equipment. With each, there's a need for a special adjustment to compensate for the greater distance the outer wheel travels when rounding a curve. The differential is the mechanical device that provides compensation. Most of us have some basic knowledge of a differential. The location, for example, in the rear axle. By definition, many of us would say that a differential has something to do with making the rear wheels go around. And certainly that's true. But to be accurate, a simple differential is a gear arrangement that permits power from the engine of a self-propelled vehicle to be transmitted to two driving wheels, dividing the driving force equally between them and permitting one axle shaft to revolve faster than the other when required. The story of the differential begins up here, with the engine. The engine generates power, transmits it through the transmission to the drive shaft and on to the rear axle, where the differential goes to work filling some very special requirements. Here at the rear axle, the rotation of the power from the engine must be turned at right angles to move out to the wheels, which then rotate to move the vehicle forward or backward as needed. The axle ring and pinion gears are responsible for changing the direction of the transmitted power. At the same time, the differential compensates for the greater distance the outer wheel must travel when rounding a curve. To explain this further, when a vehicle rounds a curve, every wheel is revolving at a different speed. On a normal vehicle, the front wheels revolve independent of one another on their own wheel ends. The rear wheels, however, present an entirely different situation. When two wheels run parallel to one another on rounding a curve, the outside wheel revolves faster than the inside wheel, since it must travel farther on the longer arc of the curve. And that's where the differential comes in, to provide equal driving force to the two rear wheels through each of their axle shafts, while still allowing them to rotate at different speeds to compensate for the greater distance the outer wheel must travel. This prevents undue scuffing of tires and reduces axle strain. Another situation where a differential is beneficial is when a driving axle has been equipped with tires of different diameters. That is, mismatched tires. When this happens on a vehicle that is traveling in a straight line, the wheel with the smaller tire must rotate faster in order to travel the same distance as the opposite wheel. Again, The differential takes over in this situation by supplying equal driving force to the two driving wheels, while still allowing them to rotate at different speeds. First of all, recall that the differential is integral with the drive axle. It therefore works with drive axle components. Here's the basic truck differential itself. It consists of a differential case, a cross, which is sometimes referred to as the differential spider, 4 differential pinion gears, 2 differential side gears, and washers. It's important to note that these components alone make up the differential assembly. The drive axle basically consists of the drive pinion, the ring gear, the 2 axle shafts, 1 for each driving wheel, the differential, and the axle housing. The differential assembly fits into the drive axle between the axle shafts, with the shafts being attached to the differential side gears. By following the path of power through an axle, we can see how the differential in the drive axle does its job. As we saw earlier, power from the engine passes through the transmission to rotate the drive shaft. The drive shaft, in turn, rotates the drive pinion on the end of the shaft. As the drive pinion meshes with the ring gear, it causes the ring gear to turn in the forward direction. Since the ring gear is fastened to the differential case, the case turns as well. In addition, the differential cross must also turn or rotate with the case. The differential pinions, which are assembled on the cross, are forced to rotate against the side gears. It should be noted that the pinions are assembled so that they rotate with the cross and or on the cross, depending on the driving requirements. Let's look at that again. They rotate with the cross and or on the cross, depending on the driving requirements. Each side gear, as pointed out, is attached to an axle shaft. As each side gear rotates, it rotates its axle shaft, and the shaft, in turn, rotates the driving wheel to which it is secured. The path of power, then, is from the engine, through the transmission, the drive shaft, through the differential to the axle shafts, and then to the driving wheels on the vehicle. To understand how the differential compensates for the unequal distances the rear wheels travel through a curve, or for the situation created by mismatched tires, let's start here. This is a straight line or straight ahead driving situation. We'll assume that both rear tires are the same diameter, that both are traveling at the same speed and have equal traction. In this situation, the differential pinion gears only rotate with the cross. This is because they are driving the side gears at the same speed. But the story changes as the vehicle moves into a turn or curve situation, and the differential begins to compensate for the different wheel speeds to meet the turning requirements of each axle shaft. The pinion gears are the key to the compensation for the difference in wheel speed. Meshed with the 2 side gears, they essentially are dragging the side gears along. In a turn situation, as we've said, the outer wheel must travel farther. Therefore, to do so, and to stay even with the inner wheel, the outer wheel must travel faster than the inner wheel. At the same time, the inner wheel, with a shorter distance to travel, slows down. We then have a situation in which one wheel is turning faster and the other slower. The differential pinions allow this by rotating with the cross and on the cross at the same time. A dual action which allows equal power to be delivered to both axle shafts, while still allowing for differences in axle shaft speed. The situation here further illustrates the point. When one wheel has less traction than the other, as in a wheel spinning on gravel or ice, it offers little resistance to the pinions and spins wildly. The opposite wheel, the one with the better traction, offers more resistance to the pinions and does not move. In the overall, then, the pinions can be thought of as the heart of the differential. In a way, they sense what the situation is and then act or react to best meet that situation. As such, they become a means of compensation. When a vehicle rounds a curve or makes a right or left turn, or when tires are mismatched to give wheels different diameters, causing the smaller diameter wheel to turn faster than the wheel opposite. Out on any highway, on any self-propelled vehicle, the differential is tremendously important. It's vital to automotive travel as we know it. Without a differential, our cars and trucks would only be able to travel in a straight line. But with it, we can negotiate any curve, any turn. For this reason alone, the differential earns a place as one of automotive engineering's great innovations. But there's more to the differential story. As trucks have grown larger and carry bigger payloads, there's been a need to supply them with tandem axles to provide the necessary load carrying and drive axle power. But the tandem-equipped vehicle must also allow for speed differences between the front and rear axles of the tandem. To accomplish this job, there's the Interaxle differential, also known as the power divider or third differential. The Interaxle differential is a gear arrangement that takes full power from the engine and delivers it to both the forward and rearward driving axles, while allowing for differences of speed between the axles. Components of the Interaxle differential are basically the same as in a regular differential: a cross or spider, differential pinion gears, washers, a case, and the side gears. However, in the Interaxle differential, the side gears drive the axles rather than the wheels, as in a conventional differential. The Interaxle differential exists to compensate for different axle speeds, which are frequently caused by mismatched tires. Basically, it's very important that all tires used in a tandem axle be matched within 1/8 inch of the same rolling radius or 3/4 inch of the same rolling circumference. This is an ideal situation, of course, and one that's not always easily maintained. The job of the Interaxle differential is to compensate for uneven or mismatched tires between the axles. Here, for example, is a tandem where the rear driving axle has smaller tires than the front driving axle. The result is that the rear axle wants to turn faster than the front axle to compensate for its smaller diameter tires. The Interaxle differential allows this to happen. But let's see how. The typical Interaxle differential is mounted at the front of the forward driving axle. It's connected directly to the drive shaft. In operation, engine power is delivered to the Interaxle differential cross or spider. As the cross turns, it carries the pinion gears along with it, and the pinion gears become the key to power division between the axles. Traveling with the cross, the pinion gears drive the side gears along, and the side gears are so arranged that one drives the front axle of the tandem while the other drives the rear axle. In this example, the forward side gear operates the front axle by means of the drop gears. This side gear is made hollow to allow the input shaft to pass through the gear and through the center of the Interaxle differential. The through shaft is connected to the rear side gear and operates the rear axle of the tandem. In this manner, each side gear drives one of the tandem axles independently of the other. Since the pinions are pulling both side gears and can also rotate on the cross while doing so, the two side gears can operate at different speeds when necessary, as is the case with mismatched tires. Here, the need is for one axle to turn faster than the other. Spin out. is an operational hazard for the interaxle differential. Spinout can be defined as excessive differential action. On a single rear axle, main differential spinout occurs when one wheel remains stationary while the other wheel is spinning. In the tandem, spinout occurs in the interaxle differential when one of the axles remains stationary while the other axle turns. As a source of differential failure, spinout is one of the most serious of all failure conditions. To prevent it, the driver is the key. His knowledge of spinout and what prevents it is the only way to forestall costly differential damage and downtime. Spinouts occur in 3 driving situations: backing under a trailer, starting on a slippery surface, and traveling on a slippery surface. In the first of these, as a tractor backs under a trailer, the tractor must make an extra effort, which can cause loss of traction between tires and ground. If the pavement is wet or slippery in this situation, spinout is very likely. Spinout is also more likely to occur if the surface is unpaved. The second driving situation, starting on a slippery surface, is also a frequent cause of spinout. Spinout here is most likely to occur in mud or snow when an attempt is made to work free by stepping on the accelerator and burning it out. The result? Well, it's often a ride behind a tow truck on the way to an expensive repair. Moving when the road is slippery or wet makes a truck a candidate for the third spinout situation: traveling on a slippery surface. Spinout here is caused by the additional torque required to attempt to maintain speed. The added torque can produce a loss of traction, which in turn brings on the spinout. In any of the 3 spinout situations, it's important to remember that the interaxle differential is much more susceptible to spinout damage than is the main differential. One of the major reasons is seen here. It's the fact that the interaxle differential rotates at prop shaft RPM. That is, at a much higher speed than the main differential, which rotates at wheel RPM. This speed difference is very significant. Since the prop shaft speed of the interaxle differential can be more than 3 times as great as the wheel RPM of the main differential. This much greater speed generates increasing heat due to decreasing lubrication. The centrifugal force of the wildly spinning cross throws the lubricant away from the surfaces most requiring it. The resulting heat can cause damage like this to a differential pinion and cross, which have been welded together by the heat of friction. A failure of this kind is catastrophic in terms of damage, but there are many failures like it. In this spinout failure, the interaxle differential cross is broken. Here, another cross leg has been welded to the pinion through the heat of friction. We can only attempt to imagine the intensity of such heat. These examples are extreme, but by no means uncommon. On the contrary, such damage occurs with considerable frequency. But the point is, for the most part, it's preventable. The driver is the key, and the answer is on the dash. It's the interaxle differential selection switch. Recall that we said that one spin-out condition with a tandem is when one axle turns and the other is stationary. Use of the switch prevents this by allowing the interaxle differential to be bypassed so that one axle cannot spin faster than the other. This is accomplished by a sliding gear which locks the forward side gear to the through shaft to effectively remove the ability of the differential to allow speed differences between the axles. Thus, if either axle is on dry pavement and has sufficient traction, the vehicle will move. Unfortunately, many drivers don't understand this locking process, and the easy use of the selector switch. The switch, located in the cab, has both unlock and lock positions. When approaching poor traction situations, there are just 3 easy steps to follow. First, simply flip the selector switch to lock position while you maintain vehicle speed. Second, let up momentarily on the accelerator. This will engage the differential lock. And third, proceed cautiously. Then, when you've passed through the adverse traction conditions, the unlock position is used to put the interaxle differential back into operation to meet the needs for cornering, mismatched tires, and uneven road conditions. To do this, use these 3 steps to unlock. First, flip the switch to unlock position while maintaining vehicle speed. Second, let up momentarily on the accelerator. And third, resume safe speed. Along with these easy steps for locking and unlocking, there are 2 important cautions to remember. First, do not spin the wheels with the interaxle differential unlocked. And second, do not actuate the switch while the wheels are actually slipping or spinning. Good advice that can prevent a great amount of trouble and even a greater amount of expense. Yes, adapting power output to the wheels on the road, wherever there's more than one wheel to handle the load. That's the job of the differential, to split the difference and put the right amount of power to work in the right place at the right time. In less than a century, motor vehicles have revolutionized our civilization. They've given us marvelous new means to attend to the essentials of life and to its diversions. Means to grow our food and consume it. Means to build and furnish and maintain millions upon millions of homes. Means to mine the earth's riches and to process them. Means to run our factories and get their products into the hands of consumers. And the means to enjoy moments away from our labors. Seldom has the road been straight. Seldom has the road been smooth. Seldom have ideal conditions prevailed. The differential, basic or interaxle, has been on the job, making a key contribution, splitting the difference to put power to work where the rubber meets the road.